We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I will also have a podcast up after the game. Probably it'll be late Sunday night, and then the YouTube video would be out early Monday morning because, to be honest, by the time you get that going, folks, people are in bed. On the East Coast especially. Shout out West Coasters. I know you're still up, but we'll take care of you Monday morning too. So anyways, there you go. And I mean, in a minute, I'm going to get into all my 5 things I think, not just about this game, because there aren't 5 thoughts I think I have on this game. I have a few. But I always like to bring you more than just about the upcoming game, because there's more to learn about this team, and some of it pertains to this game, but some of this stuff, just stuff that you learn throughout the week. So I always like doing that. Before I get there, I do want to talk a minute about what this game is. Obviously, it's an alumni game, and it's also the game where Darrell Green's having his jersey retired. Now, I did a podcast earlier this week for the club members talking about Darrell Green, some of my recollections of him. And in a nutshell, one of the more unique guys I've covered because of the high-level talent. By the time I started joining the beat, he was already in the middle of a Hall of Fame career. And you could see why. It's not just, and if you listen to the Fred Smoot podcast, you can definitely tell why Green is in this point, because of just the things that Smoot said and the stuff that he learned from Darrell Green. And, not everybody can do what Darrell Green did. So he, put aside the speed, the quickness and the anticipation, everything, he had it all. And that's why he was able to last and have such a great career, a unique career. And the funny thing is, at the end of it, he was probably a little bit, I wouldn't say closer to the reporters. That's not true. But I do know in the locker room, he'd like to talk to us because we were a lot closer in age to him than he was to a lot of his teammates. But he's always been a guy willing to mentor and kind of take people under the wings. And so I think that's always, it's funny because people ask me over the years, like, oh, they should hire him as a coach. He would not have been a coach. Like, put that aside. That was never his personality. He's a guy that has to keep going and going and going and go from one thing to another. It was sometimes hard to pin him down with stuff. So, but he's a guy you could come in, you want to ask him stuff. You want to say, hey, can you go talk to this player? Like Sam Russell's talked to him. He's talked to Emmanuel Forbes. So there are things that you can learn, that people can learn from him. He doesn't have to be a coach. Now everybody wants to be that. Now Darrell Green has always had bigger things that he wanted to do. But it's about time to me that they're honoring him in this way. And I know Sean Taylor, like with the connection here, with the fan base, with the previous owner. But I felt like some of these older guys who developed this franchise into what it became as far as one of the hallmarks of the NFL really needed to be honored as well. So I think, and this group is going to start doing that. This is the first one. There will be some others that they do some things with. You can only retire so many numbers, folks, because to me, you have to make that very, very special to do. You can't just do anybody. But Darrell Green, with 1,000%, has long deserved this. And I'm glad to see he's getting it. I've always enjoyed my talks with Darrell. So over the years, and it'd be nice to see him on Sunday, and a lot of the other alumni as well. The other thing with the alumni too, to keep in mind here, they're happy to now be coming back, because there was, when the team sold to Josh Harris, that was the first part of the reawakening for a lot of people. I would give a lot of credit to the alumni director, Tim Hightower. He stayed in touch with a lot of these guys. He kept trying to bring them back in the fold. And that relationship that he developed paid off after Josh Harris took over. Now, in some cases, some of these guys like to do things. They also want to be paid for them because there are appearances, right? And they're asking to do things. You can't just expect someone to give up their time without some sort of compensation. They're getting that. And so but it's more than that. It's way more than that. It's about feeling welcome out there. And I think the coach, Dan Quinn certainly understands what their presence means. And I know there have been times in the past where guys didn't always feel welcome under various regimes or whatever, or they didn't, like Daryl Green did not want to be associated with them any longer. And so all of that has changed. And I think it's way for the better. And, there's so much going on, the name change, blah, blah, blah. But what people want to see is in a lot of these alumni, and yeah, if you ask them privately, are they happy about the name? No. But what they really want to see is this franchise to be good again. And I think there's going to be more excitement Sunday from them about what they're seeing than there has been in a long, long time. And so that's one of the things that I'm curious to see, to talk to some of them about, like, what are they seeing and what are they feeling when they're watching them? Is it fun again for them to come back, to be part of this and to create new memories or whatever, or to watch new memories unfold? And Dan Quinn, like I said, we asked him on Friday, or somebody asked him on Friday, the importance of this. And there's a value in having these guys around. You don't need guys always sit there and talk about the past, like, well, we did this back in 1987. It's not about that. It's about, you can relay, like, hey man, when this team is going right, this town responds this way. Get it going. They're going to do this for you. They'll do this for you. This is how they responded for us. And then you can also talk about, like, handling pressure. What was it like? This is why Doug Williams is so invaluable. There's things that the information, the wisdom he can dispense to any player in that building. But there's a lot of wisdom to be shared. And it's not just about, like, oh, bring this guy in to work with the pass rush. Well, there's a lot of different things going on now. Things are a little bit, in some cases they're different. In some cases, certain things will never change. But I think it's approach, and the excitement that surrounds the team and what it takes to win. Like, that group knows a lot of that group knows what it takes to win. Those are things you can impart upon any team. Like, hey, yeah, that you talk to the guys in the 80s and early 90s, and it's like, hey, we were playing for the guy next to us. And when you develop things like that, how do you develop that? What are things you can do? That's information they can absolutely deliver anytime it's asked. Anyways, but I'll be curious to see I'm sure they're having a lot of fun with the way it is now. Anyways, enough of that. Let's get to my 5 things, I think. And we're going to start with Jayden Daniels. And I think he's really good, but I think there are a lot of things he does well that lead to natural positive conclusions. For example, then we were talking to Brian Johnson, the pass game coordinator, about this on Friday a little bit, but there are just some things you see on the games that then when you talk to people and all that, but it's the way he uses his eyes. And I'll use the first touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin as example the other day, where he's manipulating the defense, but not on purpose in this situation. So, and if you remember the first touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin against the Ravens, hits him to the back of the end zone. He's coming from the left side. He is not the primary read on the play. The primary read on the play is Olamide Zaccheaus. So he's running like a little pivot route. So what Jayden Daniels has to do is read the corner. So he's reading the corner, and he even kind of gets ready to throw it, and then he pulls it. But then he goes to the next, right? The read takes him from there to the back, right? And that's where McLaurin is. But because he does it properly, guys are biting on the play. It wasn't done like, I'm going to fool them and then go to McLaurin. It was here's my read. I'm ready to throw. They're reacting. It's not there. Now I'm ready to go here. And the way he manipulated was just with getting his eyes in the right place, but getting his body turned and ready to go, and they have to react. And so but it was a natural manipulation. It wasn't sometimes, you get dropped back, you get the safety, and you're like, I gotta move them because I'm going to move them over here, then I'm going to go over here. It wasn't that. It was a natural manipulation because of the timing and rhythm of the play that he read it. He read it right. He goes to his next read, gets it off, touchdown. So it was just a really good play, but that's something he does very well. And then and sometimes it's just on purpose. But I think that's an area that highlights just where he's at as a quarterback, and it's not always easy to do that. And there are guys who don't do that at all, or they don't go through the progression at the right pace. So maybe in that situation, you don't throw it to your first guy, but you're a little bit hesitant coming back or looking off him. Maybe you get too long, and then the safety might recover in time. So the next read is not there. In this case, it is there. And so there's some things you don't want to overdo the analysis of Daniels and just read into everything as if it's the greatest thing ever. I just think there's a lot of things he does well. And I think that's one of the things he does well is just get through those progressions. But the byproduct of doing that is creating openings for others. If you do it at the right pace and the right time, it could be a check down, but you're giving the guy more chance to run after the catch because you get it to him at the right time and rhythm. And if you do that by design, they should be open. So that's what is going on. That's one of his strengths. But the other thing Johnson was talking about too is just the quickness he plays with. And you look at the quickness he can, when there are times where these linemen, and the linemen will tell you this, like they'll be beat on a couple plays. And I had one lineman tell me like, I've been beaten. Last game I was beaten 2 or 3 times, but because of number 5, it didn't matter. And so this is when we talked about last year, all those sacks, like this is why it matters. And that quickness shows up, in a big way. There are a lot of times, like there were times last year where I thought like Sam Howell made a decision to get out of the pocket, but he just didn't have the same level. He was athletic, but he didn't have the same level of quickness. So it was just a lot harder for him to get out, even if it was at the right time. Maybe in college you get out of that, but Daniels can typically get out of something, and that saves these linemen for sure, who are doing well. But the point is, like, there are times, this is what a good quarterback does. Like, Tom Brady for years made the Patriots line look really good. They had a really good line coach, but he also made him look good because of his decision-making. That's how this works. And, but that's what Daniels is doing for them for sure. And he's, again, quickness, vision, and that's what he offers. Anyway, you should be pleased with how Daniels is progressing because they're ecstatic as hell. And I know like they feel like he's further along than where they thought he would be if they had to draw it up and say it. But yes, he's definitely further along, or they can get deeper. Cliff Kingsbury admitted he can get deeper into his playbook because of how because of how he works and because of, how quickly he has picked things up. It's a studying. And by the way, I know that Frankie Luvu said he gets there at 4 a.m. Typically it's closer to 5. That's pretty damn early, but it's not always at the same time, but I would say 5-ish, for sure. But the point is, like, that work he gets there early. He watches film. He's doing walkthroughs. He's constantly communicating with coaches and with teammates. So, texting, obviously when you're out there, you can do that, but it's also texting. So there's constant communication and desire to learn and improve. That's why they hit a grand slam with this young man.
Hey, it's Bram Weinstein here, voice of the Commanders, and of course, frequent guest of this podcast, The John Keim Report. I wanted to let you all know that my show, which airs at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on ESPN 630, is now exclusively produced by Empire Media, my company, and it's going to be distributed through our network. So I'm asking you, please, if you subscribe to this show and love this show, give mine a try as well. Subscribe to the Bram Weinstein Show wherever you get your podcasts, and many of the shows and many of the elements that are in the show will be available on the Empire Media YouTube channel. We're going to talk a ton of Commanders and other DC sports. Check it out.
Now, number 2, trade deadline. I don't think they're going to be these big-time buyers at the trade deadline by any means. That would go against their approach that they have stated they want to do, which is build for a long-term success. I have not seen that here. Now, that Bram was on here the other night, and he's very much in favor of them going and getting somebody. But I think there's also, even Bram acknowledges that you're not giving up high picks to bring someone here. You weren't going to go out and get Amari Cooper. First of all, they're doing pretty well at receiver. They know that this roster is not at a Super Bowl level. So how many guys are you missing to get it to that level? It's more than just one. You need at least a corner, maybe two. You need another guy up front. So like there's probably a good 3 players that you would need who are good players to get you to that level. Now, can you go get a guy now? Well, yes, I think you can do some bargain shopping. I think that's like they've done a good job with that, identifying who to bring in and then making sure they're fit without having to give up a ton. I would not see them making some big move to do that. It just, again, would run counter to who they are and how they operate. And they have a lot of ammunition in the offseason, 9 draft picks, second highest cap space, and they can create even more with a couple moves, including if they wanted to part ways with John Allen. That would create another $17 million in cap space. So they can be extremely active in free agency. It also does give them flexibility now if they wanted to add somebody who fits into their plan now, but also it has to be somebody who fits in the future. And but again, I'm looking more at like depth pieces, bargain hunting. Those are the phrases that you hear out there. And so that's what I would, if they make some moves, that's what I would expect. I'm not looking for the Devontae Adams type deals here. But again, if you have a chance to get somewhere and they say, hey, listen, the price is only a 5th round pick, well, then you have to consider it. But if you're looking in those first 3 rounds, it'd be really hard to see that as we sit right now. The other thing is too, let's see where the league is in 2 weeks and where everything's at, because that is going to be telling as well. And what happens over the next couple of weeks will also help teams decide what they want to do, where they want to go. I do think it'll be interesting to see, do they try to move guys like Emmanuel Forbes and Jamin Davis? Dan Quinn, when he was talking about the defensive line today, was about guys that could go out in there. Dorrance Armstrong, I should have told you this earlier, but Dorrance Armstrong is out. I'm sure you know that. And I'll get into the injury report later. I should have read that first. I usually do, but I forgot. But Dorrance Armstrong is out. Tyler Owens is out. The Panthers are banged up as well. Anyways, so when we're asking about, like, you don't have John Allen, you don't have Dorrance Armstrong this week, and I don't know about Armstrong for the following week either. It's a rib injury. It's pretty painful, like, especially when you're defensive lineman, what you have to do up front. That's really, really hard to play with. And it's something that he's never dealt with. So you knew he would be out this week. Next week, I don't know. And so we'll get to that later. But the bottom line is, when we were asking about it, or when he was asked about it, he brings up a bunch of names. Well, he didn't talk about Jamin Davis. Now, whether it was at an oversight, maybe. But I also think it highlights where Davis is at right now. Because if it was, for sure, Jamin's ready, he's going to come up. Well, I don't think the experimented end is going the way that anybody had hoped. So would they be able to move him, and who would really want to take him on? And, guy in last year's contract, you'd move him back to linebacker. Could he help somebody? Could you maybe swap picks with someone, get a slightly higher pick in the 6th round or the 7th round, whatever? Because I just don't think that anybody's going to really take him on. And then think with Forbes, kind of the same thing. Like, and even with Davis, if you're a team and you really want him, could Washington make a move? Are they going to stick with him this whole year? Because like there was some hope this summer that maybe he could develop into something who could be someone who could be a strong contributor. Does that hope still exist? Because it certainly, based on the play time, does not feel that way. I know there were times, and I know they were willing to be very patient with him. And so we'll see if that remains the case. But if you're another team, you want a linebacker, you want a guy who can run, you want a guy who can play in special teams, maybe you go do something. I really don't see anybody taking on him or Emmanuel Forbes. And even with Forbes, they still need some depth there. And so that's not a position of strength as far as depth goes. So it'd be kind of hard to see anybody really taking on either of those players. But again, with this team, if you were going to go out and look for somebody, to me, I'm like, obviously look at corner, but can you really get a frontline starter with that? Awfully, awfully, awfully difficult. Depth. Same with the defensive line. If you can get some rotational guys, but they brought in Jalen Holmes. They like him. They like Sheldon Day. With as far as like just a guy who can develop in their program. Clearly, there'd be some guys who would probably be stronger than him out there if you can go get him. But those are the kind of guys you're looking at, depth rotational pieces, because depth down the stretch is what's going to matter most to any team. I think I really like how honest it feels like this group is, the coaching staff is, about where they're at and what they need to do. And I like that they don't make excuses. And I think we're going into a game like this where you're playing a team that's 1-5, you're 4-2. They're not feeling good because they're coming off a loss, but they feel good about where they're at in terms of being 4-2. But I like the approach that they take. And I like that Dan Quinn has said after the game that it felt like after the Ravens game, okay, you can look and say, okay, you're one score from tying them. You're one drive from tying the game. But were you really that close? And I think that's what he was trying to get across to them, that what do you call it? It was lopsided. So to him, like, he's looking at it in totality. And I don't think that was always the case here in the past. There were times in the past where I felt like they would try, like going into Rivera's third year, it was almost like, okay, it's a third year, we're ready to go. Well, they weren't, because you remember them talking about that, and you're like, well, the roster just doesn't support that belief, that optimism, that hope. And, whereas this group, I think it's more like not so much tamping down expectations, but also keeping guys focused on what you need to do. And you can't just snap your fingers and say, like, all right, we're 6 games in and we're ready to do this, because that's not the case. But that's why I like the way they do that. And it's funny, because when we were talking to Johnson about Quinn today and things that he's learned from him and all that, what stands out, and he talks about his leadership. He talks about the intentionality he has. And I had one coach tell me before he was hired that he was the best coach that he's been around at setting the tone for the building. And I think he's done that here for sure. Quinn Johnson talked about his practice planning, his vision, the alignment for all that. Like, all that stuff matters. But I think it's that consistent message, but also, acknowledging, like, like after the Giants, game was won, got to get better here. So it's not, and after games, you're not hearing excuses, even you're not hearing that. So I think they're really good at that. I think that's how you keep teams focused. And when you're going into a game against a team that's bad, Carolina's bad, but any team in the NFL can win, and they're well aware of that. And this franchise is not far removed from being one of those, hey, on any given Sunday, the Commanders could beat you. Right? They're not far removed from that. In fact, they're about 6 games removed from that. So they understand that, but I think it comes from the top. And this is what he offers this organization. But I think it's why they're positioned to handle weeks like this, where you're coming off a loss. You have an opponent at home you should win. You got all this stuff going on. In the past, I have a feeling this team would lay an egg. But I don't think they have those guys. I think they're in just a much better spot. And I think with the quarterback is like that too. Quarterback's not sitting there thinking like, oh, I did this, I've done this, I've won this award or that award already. That's not how he operates. And I think that's why he's going to be very good. But I also think there are a lot of guys in that building who operate the same way, and others who have done that in the past, but it just didn't come out because they didn't have enough people who were like that. So I think that's all good. I also think this is another one, but think about the communication issues and some of the breakdowns. I think they can be resolved, but it's going to take some work. And there are some things, and I talked to some players this week about some of the communication issues or just some other mistakes that were made that, like, okay, how do you fix this? If you're in this situation again, what do you do? The communication issue, if you remember the 38-yard pass to Mark Andrews last week, where there was a clear breakdown, he's running wide open on the left side. And that was a communication error. And it's funny because Joe Witt, who's very honest about this stuff, and I like how he does it too, and he'll blame himself, but it's clear. He's like, the call was relayed. Like before the snap, Quan Martin is assigned to cover Mark Andrews. He at the snap or before the snap is up there. You can see him clapping his hands, and he said he was making a call. And I remember I was talking to him this week about like, well, how do you, like, what do you do in that? Like, how is it that some get it? Cause like pretty much in some cases, everybody's getting it but one. He's like, sometimes guys are just so locked in on what they're doing, they may not process it. They may not hear it. So sometimes you may have to just, instead of like clapping or just shouting out like, change, whatever you're shouting out to signal a change, you may have to yell directly at the guy's name so they hear their name and they look at you, and then you can change it, right? Kind of a pain, but that's what you have to do, because especially when you're playing on the road and it gets louder and there are late changes, then you have to be aware of that. And so that's one area that he said that, yeah, they can improve that. And it's just about knowing how to get better at that. And I said, the problem is sometimes they're seeing a play that they weren't like, it may be a new play that team put in this week, because every team does that. So you may not have seen that look, and then you just hope, like, well, what do you do then? It's like, you just hope that everybody plays their rules. And if you do that, like if you all mess up in the same way, you can lessen the mistake, as they say. Like, but if three guys play it one way and the fourth guy plays another way, that's when these 38-yard plays result. So that's a communication error that can be corrected, but hasn't been. And you just, for their sake, like, they've got to learn, like, okay, how do you do it? And can it be just a signal? But you've got to get the attention of a player. And again, as Martin said, sometimes guys are just so locked in, it can be hard to get their attention. And because you have a lot of things you're looking at. If you're a corner or a safety, you're looking at this, and this, and you're trying to process this and this. And then, oh, now they're motioning. Now what? So a lot going on, but that's the challenge. And that's why they get paid the money. And it's why offensive coordinators get paid a lot of money to fool them. So anyways, the other one is Frankie Louvu. I was talking to him, if you remember, on the 33-yard run by Lamar Jackson. So there were a couple breakdowns on that play, one of which was Jeremy Chinn's angle was too flat, and you got to come up harder and you got to get up more, faster into that hole, right? Funnel him back to the inside. The other part was Frankie Louvu. And I remember talking about this on the game review Tuesday morning. And so I was talking to him about this too. Like, it's a crack. There's a crack block on him. So how do you handle that? What do you do? And I remember talking to one defensive coach who was like, sometimes they may have their guys kind of line up more over the guy who's going to crack him. If you're anticipating that, maybe you can do that. The problem with that, and this is what Louvu said, that if he does that, then now you're creating another gap. And what if they then hit that gap instead? What if that's where the play is going? Now you've widened that gap. Now you're in trouble. So he said what he needs to do in that, if that situation arises again, is just to get upfield faster and try to disrupt the play with your quickness, which he has. And, or you got to play it over the top. So you can do a couple of things, but he said lining up over the guy, or maybe more over the guy, could lead to another issue in another spot. But if you can play it quicker and it's coming, you get upfield, then you can really disrupt the play. And that was one of the other things. But those are things you learn. And that's because they're going to get cracked more. And that's something that he has learned. But it's funny, with Louvu, is just what a big part he's been of this defense. But this is who they thought they were getting. And this is what Carolina is missing as well. So he's obviously a very versatile piece. When they signed him, they knew he'd be a versatile piece. I know, like, people like to bring up the Micah Parsons. Well, he's not Micah Parsons, but he can be used in different ways. And he can rush from over here. He can rush from over here. He can blitz from over here. He's not lining up in the 3-point stance with the hand in the dirt, but he can get after you from multiple ways. It's just the energy he provides is really one of the difference, makes him a guy who can be a difference maker for this defense. And you better believe he'll have. It's funny because I'm gonna say, you better believe he's going to be anxious for this game against his old team. He's also like, hey, he was there for 3 years and it was great and blah blah blah. But you always want to prove to your old team what they're missing, and I don't think he's going to be any different than him. And the funny thing is with guys like this goes back to, in some ways, what Dan Quinn likes to do, which is, how do you develop players? And he spent a lot of time over the years talking to people about how to develop players. And sometimes it's as simple as, like with Louvu, for example, he'll go out in practice, he'll do some pass rush moves. He'll spend several minutes doing pass rush moves, working with the defensive ends on pass rush moves, because that's what they need him to do too. So it's not just all linebacker. They did that with Micah Parsons in Dallas, and it's why he was so effective. But there has to be an intentionality, there's that word, about developing guys, and Quinn has that, and it benefits guys like Louisville. I will say Carolina used him pretty well last year too. That's why you knew how versatile he was and what he could do, because it's what the Panthers did. But I do think they're trying to unlock even more with Louisville here. So, and having Wagner next to him certainly will help. All right, so I think Carolina isn't very good. So this is the last one, and that's not a very revealing statement, is it? However, I'm going to break it down by offense and defense, because offensively, they do have things that can hurt Washington if they have their health. And so this is where let's go back to the injury report real quick, because they are missing a couple guys on offense, possibly receiver Deontay Johnson. That would be a loss, but he's questionable. Did develop another issue this week with his ribs. I don't know where that leaves him. They also are already down a center, Austin Corbett, and they also lost their right tackle as well already. So that's a loss, right? So that could factor into this game. We'll see. But they do have Chuba Hubbard, very good running back, and Andy Dalton has been a professional quarterback for them, something that Bryce Young was just unable to be. So they are a more effective offense with Dalton running the show. But when I say more effective, really, like in the past game, they're kind of in the middle, right? They can move the ball, they can threaten you, they can score a little bit, but they're not really going to beat you offensively, but they can keep themselves in the game offensively and make themselves difficult to handle for 3 quarters, and then maybe you pull away because their defensive line is just going to wear down. I'll get to that in a minute. But Chuba Hubbard is really good. He's had 4 games in a row over 90 yards. And I think because everything in their offense starts with him. He's a very patient runner. Watch for the cutback lanes. This is something they do very well. They have an improved offensive line. I'll be curious to see how it is again without center and right tackle. But they do have an improved line, and he does create a lot of problems for them with his ability to cut back. And I think that's where he can hurt teams. Definitely where he can hurt teams for sure. But that vision shows up time and again on film. Like you see him again pressing the hole, but with patience. And by doing that, he's getting the linebackers to flow, but he's setting up his blockers. But again, I will see, like with Corbett now, I mean, that's a huge loss for the Panthers front. But the ability by Hubbard to set guys up still helps. So, but it is a banged up team, folks. And, if you can, this is what I'll be curious to see, like, do you just devote 8 in the box to stop Hubbard? Or do you just say, like, let him get his, but prevent everything else? And so I think you can devote a little bit more, because this is depending if Deontay Johnson plays. Now, if Johnson plays, he gives them a speed threat. He and Dalton have been pretty good together. So you have to be aware of him. They will take shots to him down the field. And we know that these corners can be beat on some of the, on long passes if you go to that, if you go to a, cover one with those guys playing man. So that could be an issue. They also have Xavier Legette, and that is how you pronounce it. It's not Legette, it's Legette. So he's got some size. He's a good athlete. He runs. I think he was under a 4.4 40. And he can jump. So you can use that together. He can hurt them if they let him. But I don't think this is a passing that's it should not beat you, but it will concern you. How does that? And with Hubbard, it gives him another guy that you have to worry about. And he is a good back. So that's where if there's concern for this game, it's there, because with Washington's defensive front banged up going against this group, that makes it more difficult. But again, the Panthers are without a couple guys up front as well that were key players for them. So it's somewhat balances out a little bit, but that is where they can make their living, is doing that. And so, but watch for Hubbard, cutback runs, patience, vision, all that stuff. Now let's go to the defensive side. And this is where they have a lot of issues. And, it's funny because I just talked about miscommunication or communication issues. I've seen this a handful of times on film where you get like late motion to me is always very effective. Now, it can also hurt an offense from the standpoint of not every quarterback wants it because it can change the look. Now they have to diagnose the new look right on the fly, but it could also give you some problems. And there are a handful of times I would see a team would be in a bunch formation, for example, and they'd have the inside guy motion out. It changes the rules. It changes the structure of who's covering which receiver. And a couple of times I see two guys go to one guy comes back, guy breaks out to the outside, wide open. Saw that a few times. So like, to me, I'm going to test them in that and test them on some of these late motions and just to get them, just to create more opportunities for Jayden Daniels to connect with his receivers, but it will be there for sure. Their D-line gets moved. You can, when I'm watching other teams, Atlanta last week, they would reestablish the line of scrimmage. So the offensive line would kind of like, you get them in a yard downfield. It's not like they don't compete because they do, but they're missing guys as well. So Charalus, one of the linebackers, will be out. It's a younger, it's not, this defense took a big hit. This defense was good last year. They lost a lot. Burns is gone. Luvu's gone. Derek Brown out for the year. Shaq Thompson, they're just missing a lot of guys who were key players for them last year, and that stuff adds up. But it's why you can run on them. There's Jadeveon Clowney is doubtful for this game. He's one guy that can harass a quarterback. I think they only have like 6 sacks. So it's not like they're really getting the quarterback. You don't see that. They will blitz on occasion. Last year, I really liked what they did with their defense and how creative I felt like they were. You still see some of that. They will blitz from the corners, but you're not seeing it you're not seeing it as much because I just don't think you have the personnel to do that the same way, but you're going to have to generate some pressure and get some guys. The problem for them is that Jayden Daniels is really good. Again, if you wanted to send pressure, he's really good against it. So beware, and they will play, a decent amount of zone. They also have a really good corner in J.C. Horn. And I think that's one guy that I think is a really good player on this defense for sure. And now I don't know if he's going to cover Terry McLaurin all over. It seems like he's more of a boundary corner. So wherever to the boundary side of the field, that's where he'll line up. Very physical. So if he does match up against McLaurin, to me, it'll be very interesting because McLaurin is strong, but he's quick at the line. And one of the things I like about Horn is that he will change up he likes to jam people. He likes to play physical, and he will give you he covered Kyle Pitts last week, and then he's covering Kyle Pitts one play and Daryl Mooney the next. Like, this guy can do a lot, but he adjusts his game to who he's playing. So when he's playing Mooney, he's going to be physical and just stop him. The quickness alone wasn't going to get him. With Pitts, he'd be really physical. And but he'd also give him different looks. Sometimes he's giving a 2-hand jam. Sometimes he'd start and go like he's faking, but he'd fake a 2-hand jam, and it's not there. And then just to kind of throw somebody off their game or their timing off a little bit. With Mooney, he's going to ride him. You just ride him. Just be physical the whole way. But if you can combine the strength and the quickness, now you can threaten him. And I think that's what McLaurin offers. So you can watch how he does that, like his ability to get away quick, and now you're on top of him. That's going to be a key. So if and when he doesn't, I don't know that he's going to trail McLaurin or not. But again, he's typically been a boundary. But that's when those two match up. That's what you'll want to watch for. And I think Noah Brown can offer some of that as well. So I think they have the right receivers to go against this group, certainly the right quarterback. So I think but I think I like those kind of matchups because Horn is a really tough physical player. And he's good, he'll play the run. He's going to come up against the run. So I think that's something their secondary has done a pretty good job defending the run. Like, they don't miss a lot of tackles. Like, you're not seeing the yards after contact. Like, they have one of the best, they're in the top 13, 14 in the league in that area in terms of how few yards they give up after contact, because they do tackle well. So that's something they do. So it's not like you're just going to get a bunch of broken tackles and explosive plays, but you will be able to move the ball on them. And it does feel like teams start to wear them down a little bit in the fourth quarter for sure. So that's what I'm expecting here as well. But they also have, they're the worst defense in the NFL when it comes to opponents' QBR. So it's a 76.8 out of 100. The league average, 55.2. They are by far the worst in that category. I think the next one is like 60, maybe 68, 69, something like that, or 66, something lower. Washington is in the top 10 for worst teams in that they're in the 50s. So that tells you where Carolina is at defensively. Like, they have had some issues. This is in this game, you kind of expect, okay, Carolina's offense is going to do a few things early. I don't expect them to have this explosive game because it's not, I don't know that they can get to that point consistently. But I do, and I also think that it's going to be hard for them to keep this offense from really moving the ball and having success. So, and especially with Brian Robinson back, and I haven't even talked about him, but that's a big, as I record this, it's not official that he's going to be back yet, but everything is pointed to that. And he's felt really good. Last week, I didn't think he would probably play after missing practice all week. He's been limited this week, but that's a good sign for him. And we'll know more on Saturday. So check back on Saturday, but I would think as of now that he's going to play. And it's a big addition just because I think in this game, the way we put in, I love the Robinson Eckler packages, but also getting Robinson to inside the red zone area is a huge plus for them. It's where he can do his damage. So I think it's going to be a good game for this offense. And I think that's what they need to do. They need to take care of business. If you can jump on this team early, especially make some moves offensively early, now you're putting them in a big bind and you're going to be golden. And the other thing is, like with J.C. Horn too, he's the kind of guy that builds on momentum as a corner. So if you can get some things on him early, it doesn't even, listen, you may have to attack, you may not even have to attack him, but don't shy away from him when you have the opportunity. So anyway, good game for Washington. They have a huge chance to get to 5-2. I think this is a team that really understands approach and how to do it. And they have a really good quarterback. I think that's a good combo for Sunday. Anyway, folks, that's it for me. I've rambled too much. I will be back after the game to talk about wrapping up the Commanders game against the Panthers. So I'll talk to you next time.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.